All right, welcome back, guys. If you're joining us via video, we've got R2, PJGlitch, and Zapdart. How is everybody?
Very good.
Great. Exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Blown away by the AMA.
Yeah. So, I guess to start, we could say there are a few things in life that are certain. Paying taxes, the sun goes down at night and it rises again in the morning. And when ASM calls a midweek AMA on short notice, you know that it's going to be loaded with alpha, and they didn't disappoint. So hence the emergency meeting here today. What I thought we could do is talk about the reactions of the things that we learned last night. Does that sound good to everybody?
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that I think is worth just adding at the start, which didn't really dawn on me until today when I started reflecting on the AMA and listening through it again, was clearly, and this is a good thing because it shows the team is thinking about this, clearly the reason for last night's AMA and Alpha Leak was the end of the LBA lockup. They want to make sure that there isn't this flood of people getting out of that, even for the community's sake, in the sense of, you might just think, oh, it's done okay, I'm not that, there's been a bit quiet on the ASM front, I'll just take some ASTO out instead of maximizing your ASTO energy, all of the positive things that are coming. So an opportunity to remind us about all the great things that we already knew, plus dropping additional bits of alpha to be like, well, I'd be crazy to be taking my money out of the LBA and selling my ASTO and putting it into whatever, gutter cats or whatever the latest thing is that people want to buy. Nothing against gutter cats, all other cats are available.
We're friends with everyone. Yeah, that's a really good call out, Phil. I think that was evident as they started off the discussion around ASTO Energy and the various use cases around that. So exactly as you're describing, what happens when the LP is done, and maybe for the uninformed, seeing perhaps a decline in ASTO price, wondering, should I be freaking out or is everything okay? Does anybody recall what those ASTO Energy use cases are? Let's maybe start there.
Yeah, so obviously we've got the genome mining, and then it sounded like you would be able to use ASTO Energy for the actual splicing of all stars, which is, I guess you could say like spawning or breeding type thing to basically create more. And then I guess I wasn't clear on what else, if there was more than that.
I think they mentioned, someone asked the question about kind of the currency in game on some of these, some of the games coming in. And there was, I think the answer said that some items could use, some elements of the game dynamics could use AE, the ASTO Energy, and some could use ASTO or potentially, I guess, another coin.
So yeah. I recall David saying specifically generating assets. So I guess genome mining, splicing, all stars as well, and hopefully splicing Genesis brains would require ASTO Energy. And then I also remember, I think, yes, later on in the AMA, someone was asking something, and he did mention that ASTO comes up in weird places. So I'm guessing somewhere unexpected, maybe outside of I'm maybe speaking outside of ASM, but within the ecosystem, or I don't know. But he sort of said that kind of cheekily, but then they didn't want to expand there.
Yeah, I mean, and this is sort of jumping ahead, but I did notice that they, in the Discord, they created like a new type of logo, and it's basically the traditional ASM, but they've kind of flipped it on its side. And to me, it looks like almost like a portal. And from what DGen Trader Girl, from what Aaron said yesterday with the scene, which we can kind of get into a bit later, that the airdrop, there was almost a portal that she said that was created through ASTO Energy. And so it'd be interesting to see, obviously this is getting outside the scope a little bit of altered state machine, but just in terms of the ecosystem, is that going to be porting us to other places in this futureverse, metaverse within ASM, Fluff World, and kind of beyond? It's kind of quite interesting.
That makes sense with the weird places comment.
Yeah.
Some subtle alpha, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, thinking we know, maybe 15% of what's actually happening, and they find joy.
Amazing how much alpha must get dropped on these calls that we don't even know it's alpha, because it's like it's only alpha when you look back and you go, on that AMA 13 when they said blah blah blah, and you go, that makes sense now because there was this thing they've just announced.
Yeah, well, along those lines, I think one of the things David's mastered, other than anything contract related, whether that's contracts for Ethereum-based contracts or contracts for, partnership contracts, is the art of sort of subdued innuendo and, the small inflections in his voice that tell all without telling anything.
Yes, no, definitely. I mean, just even the nuance. I mean, it's fun that different community members and like Nick, you've done a great job of doing like recaps of different AMAs, but it's sort of lost when the only recap you get is like a 6-point bullet versus, someone that goes by and it's like a 6-page document of kind of everything that was said. And so it's just like, it's loaded.
But that's why I always like to listen to the AMA, because what is amazing is the way questions get answered. You can read an answer to a question and just be like, oh, so he said that. Whereas the pause, the slight giggle, and it happened a few times yesterday, and that's really, I think you missed that. And I might be relaying what happened in an AMA to a friend, and I'll be saying, oh, they said this, this, and this, but I can't convey the conviction I might feel from that call or the response by just what that person said. And that's why obviously all these additional things are really useful, and the more people do, the better. But it's like listening to the AMA and ideally listening to it again makes such a massive difference. And even listening back to the one from before or before then, so you can kind of just get a sense for the language, how things are changing, maybe picking up on little breadcrumbs, but we'll find out in the end. We're just all impatient, aren't we?
Yeah, certainly. It did help that we had a substitute teacher. It's always more fun with a substitute teacher, and I think ICE did a great job hosting.
Oh yeah,
and
good.
Yeah, I think they just got to keep the train running with Isaac and Aaron, because they're both super well spoken and they're hungry, maybe hungrier for alpha than. They definitely love alpha, so that was great.
That's why I think there's this reason with the LP, because you could tell it was literally like Aaron was kind of like, okay, we've got these 12 pieces of alpha that we probably talked about that we're happy to get out. And be like, oh, on that note, what about alpha number 6? Are we ready to drop that now? And it's like, obviously some stuff came out outside of that, but you could tell there was a case of, come on, we want to hit these points. We want to make sure this is stuff we're happy to share, and let's do it. There was one bit where I got confused and where I thought Isaac was saying this big announcement that David was being a bit coy about. And I was like, if you want to drop that, you can. And then they just moved on to the next thing. But that would have been good. That would have been a bit of fun.
I associate it with the professional football player that got signed for their boyhood team growing up, that they're like just as much a fan as they are a player. I feel like that was what Isaac did so well. He was just like right at the front row seats with all of us, just wanting to know what happens. One other thing that we haven't touched on relating to ASTO Energy and its use cases in the immediate term was around arena upgrades. And this was one of the things that Aaron was excited to talk about, that arena owners could opt to use ASTO Energy to, for example, put billboards within the arena or change the billboards out. A lot of, I guess, upgrade potential. And I've never really thought about that as an ASTO Energy use case.
No, because it's been talked about before, about the idea of sponsorship, the idea of, potentially the arenas being able to get sponsorship. And we've talked in past AMAs about, would that be something that's led by ASM or the individual arenas owners kind of being responsible for their own sponsorship, et cetera, et cetera. And so I assume that to have sponsorship, you need a canvas to put them on. But the idea that that's kind of gamified and you're investing in your arena by spending your hard-earned ASTO Energy, your hard-created ASTO Energy, to be able to say, I want more billboards, I want bigger billboards, I want cameras that I can then use for other marketing or sponsorship or whatever. I don't know. The possibilities are endless. But yeah, that was good. And it just shows you that the way that their team is thinking about making use and improving and adapting and gamifying all this and making it kind of a fun decision and having a bit of game theory around it. Do I spend all of my ASTO energy on maximizing this, or do I spend it on splicing my all-stars, or do I spend it on upgrades? Obviously not everyone's in the fortunate enough position to have an arena, but there's going to be other things like that. They talked about items, which we might come on to, which was a threw me slightly because
But I did think it was cool. I mean, sort of that, like, okay, if you're a boss, then, or you've got like a then you can kind of make a lot of those decisions. But then one thing that they'd also brought up would be individual stadiums or arenas, based on like the super, they'll play a role in kind of creating value and really shaping the direction of what you would want to turn this arena in, whether that is artwork or tournaments or just kind of anything. And especially if it's upgradable, then you can have kind of a DAO-like approach to, okay, we've got this amount of ASTO energy collectively. What do we want to vote on? Do we want to, upgrade the cameras, or do we want to, I don't know, but it's just quite an interesting thing to kind of think about.
I was also thinking that, if, they gamify how you can set up your arena, the DAO or the person who's able to make the most engaging or interesting experience for people, maybe they get the high profile games, and then, then there's economic machinations that can be applied to that. But I think that'll be also another aspect to it, possibly.
I mean, even if you've got, like, let's say a DAO and you just have like a lot of generous people, then they can put up kind of large prizes, and then over time kind of build that clout around an individual arena that people want to come and play and and whatnot.
I think this topic also opens the door for a really healthy economic sustainability model. I think when you look at play and earn gaming, one of the biggest pitfalls that has, candidly yet to be addressed is burn mechanics, and, not just having everybody come and leech, try to earn ASTO for playing and not, have that sort of closed loop of consumption. So I think when you introduce things like arena upgrades as a burn mechanic and items, maybe that, the notion of upgrades doesn't just stop at arenas. Maybe you can upgrade your all-stars in some way. Who knows? All of those are really good opportunities to burn ASTO.
Yeah, definitely.
That would lead us to the next major talking point. And this also came really early in the AMA, got everyone really excited. There were like, 4 or 5 follow-up questions on it. And that was David's conservative estimate of in the midterm, 1 million brains will be needed.
Yeah, it was. I loved it. So it went through the conversation. It was medium term, David said. Aaron said short to medium term. David said conservatively 1 million. Later on, he said seriously conservatively 1 million. I think Aaron said more than 1 million. And it was kind of like, the nuance around that. But it was interesting. We basically got a few questions. What's short to medium term? Obviously, they said they'd signed a big deal, which is what I think they made it sound like a lot of these with millions of fans, I think they said. So there's obviously a sense
they said
of
billions.
Billions.
I feel like they said billions.
And does Epic Games or EA even have billions?
Well, this is why. I mean, this is community speculation, but my money is somewhere. FIFA is probably in there somewhere, and the reason I think it could be FIFA is because several AMAs ago, or maybe early in the year, they did say that they're in talks with a major sporting league. They've already got AFA, and there's been the mention of GOATs. We've already had one GOAT with Muhammad Ali. There was speculation of maybe one from football. And in the recent AMA, someone did ask about, is there going to be another football game? Which I thought was an interesting question because we already have AFA.
Yeah.
And then David said, I can't answer that.
Well, he took it a step further and he interpreted that as American football and was starting to address the question that way.
Yeah.
And then the person was like, no, real football.
Proper football.
Like, yeah, he's like, is there similar to Muhammad Ali where it's a branded name brand?
Yeah.
Do you have that? And that's when his response was, I can't answer that.
I can't answer that.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, but didn't Aaron had say that these arenas by design are meant to be fully interoperable, and so I would think that would be between different football games, or whether it is American football or other types of sports games that you can maybe customize. Like maybe you do need that customizable upgrade if you want to convert this into a basketball court or a tennis court, or whatever.
Don't give them ideas of having to charge us more ASTO Energy for these things. So I know that's a given. It's all these things. You don't need to spend any of your ASTO Energy on that. Just if you want another camera in the cloakroom.
Yeah.
I mean, Neon City is just going to be the ASTO printer, so I think it'll be okay.
But we need. But so we've got
that brand.
What's the short medium term, and then also the number, and that's why I kind of tried to just get my head around the games that they've talked about. So we know, so the games that we know or kind of know is AFA and the Next Legends, which have been officially announced. Burn Down, which I mentioned, but he didn't sort of talk about that. But that's an ASM AI generated car racing game that's part of Atom Car Club. So those are the three that we know of.
And then Crypto Walkers is sort of more of like a fringe.
No details around that, but the ASM and Crypto Walkers have got a collab. And then there's talk of 1 or 2 Fluff World games has been mentioned before in the AMAs. So that's kind of those 6.
And then did he mention like a rugby game at one point?
He did a while ago. Yeah, he did.
A while ago?
He did. Yeah, he did.
Not this AMA.
Yeah, and no, it was actually a long time ago. Brian reminded me about it more recently.
Yeah, because they were talking about the Jonah Lomu stuff, weren't they? And like that, the idea, and obviously New Zealand is well known for its rugby. So you've got, but then on top of that, we've got the idea of things that were mentioned is millions, billion fan base, new huge collaboration, can't talk about, a soccer, a football potential game that can't answer, and then another AFA game that was generated in-house as a demonstration game, or that was then expanded on potentially in a third party.
And they may have alluded to like a Super Smash Bros fighting type game a while ago as well. So
and
it's
then
possible it's that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then obviously via my backdoor question via Chasing Tails, I was saying like, Erin, what's your favorite?
That was you, huh?
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
And she, I had to take credit for that. So I was so pleased when she went back onto the call to ask it. She's good, isn't she?
Yeah.
But to when she then said the first of several games that are non-AFA that are playable in arenas. So the first of several means either we're talking about a few of those games we've already touched upon, or there's a few more that are either agreed, signed, or in the works, or potentials. So we're talking then, like we're getting back to the whole point of a million brains, we're talking maybe 10-ish, maybe more games that are either currently in development or are more or less developed or are agreed legally on or about to be started on. So you can understand why any of those things could create big demand. And this is the bit that I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about specifically. So I think that this is a brilliant strategy and that this creates ASM as this AI within gaming protocol. So you're not buying into a game studio, or you're not buying into a particular game, you're buying into a protocol that any game that wants to incorporate AI can do. But on top of that, you're buying into a community. You're also buying into potentially between 40,000 and X million fully rigged characters, plus arenas, places to play games, etc. So that I think is good. Now, one of my friends had a different opinion, and his thought was, what maybe people should be doing, what maybe ASM should be doing, is finding out what game they want to focus all their effort and energy onto that game, get that game out, make that game as good as it can be, and make that a hit, as opposed to what I guess he referred to as a scattergun approach. Now, I kind of feel like if this is going to be a big success, the more examples of games that could hit big out there that people can see, and then they can maybe choose to take that further or in a different direction, is a good thing. But I just wonder what you guys think on that, in terms of, is it better to put all your eggs, I mean, would we have A for now? Would we be playing A for now with all the tokenomics if it wasn't for all of these other, what I consider to be positive distractions? And what also, I think, my response to my friend was, I think where I sit is, I don't think David and the team has kind of put a foot wrong, at least in how they've communicated what they've been doing to us. And I think there's an element of, we won't know all of these things. We won't know the level of collaborations, the level of games, the potential that they are seeing. So we just have to trust in the management to be able to make the decisions that we think would be best for the community. And the fact that all the way along, it's definitely been community first when they're driving value, when they're trying to give rewards, when they're trying to maintain additional rewards. They're constantly responding, like they did with you and I, R2, on when I think we both gave our feedback to Suda and said, what's the additional benefit to being in the LBA? Is there any? And they looked at that and said, yeah, there should be some continued reward for, you know, having your money locked up and providing liquidity to the community. And that things like that, most protocols wouldn't do that, but they've chosen to. So that's a slight bit of a side, but to me, it's that basis of trusting that with all of their information, they're going to do the right thing. But I guess there is, like my friend, people out there who will be thinking, why aren't we playing AFA? When AFA? When can I start earning ASTO, paying ASTO, building my amazing team, maybe having little baby all-stars? When? So what do you guys think?
I mean, it's definitely an interesting kind of a trade-off in two approaches. And I honestly think both models can be successful. And the way that I think about it is that if you have seen some of the posts by Jeff McDonald, who's the brother of David and Aaron, runs Atom Car Club, he has kind of made some interesting posts about how ASM is laying down the foundation to ultimately become like the Web3 of Steam. And where the difference is that you can really give the power back to game makers and creators, because if you have successful games that are free, you can monetize that through, skin economies or AI that's targeted towards a very specific use case. And I think that's quite interesting, but that's, more of a longer term project, because obviously the tools need to be kind of very robust and easy to use until you can build that out. And so kind of back to your other question. So I do think it is important that they nail the, AFA and these other kind of early games, just as that key proof of concept, so that you can really kind of spark the interest for so many of these creatives, these developers. And I generally think, the idea with AFA is so good in that it's what it is. It's an education of machine learning in being able to kind of optimizing your understanding of how it works and being able to adjust several levers. And I think that if there's enough skill involved in that, it's basically guaranteed to be a hit, because then the community can create all of these economies with ranking systems and rewards and tournaments and engagement. And then it's just going to create tons of interest, because there's nothing out there that exists. And I think at least for when I'm talking to some of my other friends, when they understand kind of what that is, they're all super excited about it. The hard part obviously is the onboarding when it comes to crypto and, owning your own NFTs and wallets. And that, I think that's the barrier of whether they can get to, millions of brains and millions of users or not.
I want to get to that notion of mass market adoption here in a second. But before we do so, R2, any thoughts on sort of the game strategy that Phil was describing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to what you said, Phil, that I guess I trust what they're doing, because so far they've executed so well. They've built up the storyline and just the concept. You know, I fell in love with it back in, I don't know, September last year, and it's just been along for the ride and enjoyed it thoroughly. It's the only, well, you know, I'm in Futureverse, but you know, ASM is the project I'm most bullish on. I would be more inclined to think like your friend though. You know, do one thing, do it well, and then build out from there. But yeah, again,
Do
I'm
you
going to
think
trust
that
them on
these,
what they're
do you
doing.
think all of these talks and collaborations and new agreements and partnership and new game developments, do you feel like they could be a distraction from AIFA? And do you think that AIFA is being unnecessarily delayed because of that? I'm not, you know, I'm posing it as a kind of strong question. It's obviously there's a nuance there.
I think it seems like a lot of things have just sort of snowballed and built sort of concurrently. You know, just hearing, you know, Shara, her story, you know, she sort of was researching AI and then somehow she got involved, and now she's like quite, not central, but like quite heavily involved in the project. And I think a lot of these things have just happened. And I mean, I don't actually think there's any rush to bring out AIFA other than for satisfying our desire of when. So, you know, if they're able to prove out one use case and through their connection through Delphi, they've, you know, built up another collaboration, all these sorts of things. I don't think that's such a big deal, but I can see the value in doing one thing, doing it well, and then using that to build upon. But it sounds like they're already building really strong partnerships and collaborations without having actually produced
Web3 kind of investment culture, whereas you know, Web2, it's obviously you have a product and it's like, oh, this game or this product is great, let me invest. Whereas this is more, let's sell people on the idea, give them NFTs, and then kind of fund it through that, which is obviously not the case with ASM as a cookie cutter example, but it is kind of just an interesting thought between Web 2 and Web 3.
Yeah, one last thought to your question, Phil, regarding scaling strategy, and are they giving themselves distractions or should they be laser focused on one thing? I thought David gave an interesting answer to a slightly different question during the AMA, and somebody was asking about their gaming abilities and do they outsource them? Do they use an in-house team? He basically said it was a combination of both, but he also addressed the fact that they recognize that they're a protocol and platform company first and a gaming and content company second. And so I think, you know, to that end, if they've created their playbook around that, you know, being the Steam of the Web3 space, then they're really executing that playbook. And really, they just need AIFA to be that POC that is going to have some really diehard, you know, fandom associated
it's funny,
with it.
Because like every conversation was, AIFA was always going to be this POC. And then I think the fact that they saw how good it could be, saw the traction, kind of saw it, maybe not as a AAA game, but saw that we can make so much more out of this proof of concept than just having it as a bit of a like quite nice wireframe or slightly better game. And that's why they've kind of gone in, which I like I say, I genuinely can't question it, but it's quite nice to hear you know, hear alternative opinions about within the community or outside of the community about these things, because it makes you just think about, oh, am I being too naive? Am I being, you know, am I just too in love? Is there just too much of a bromance going on here with me and the McDonald's that it's like, well, surely they never do anything wrong. But it is good to question it and to think, well, you know, hold on a sec. You know, we were expecting a game, was it Q1 2022? And it's like Q2. Now it's probably end of year, and it's fine. Like but if anything, it gives you an opportunity to be able to try and get a few more of these assets at potentially depressed prices, rather than the game out, there's hype, you know, loads of new people coming into the community, which obviously we all want, but it's an opportunity, isn't it? And the longer that opportunity is around, that's potentially a good thing for us as well. Early adopters. All right.
So just looking at the clock, I want to be mindful of time. there's a lot
We've
of
covered most of the things you want to cover, Nick.
topics
surely, yeah?
here. So let me list 3 big topics, and you guys let me know with our remaining time which one you want to talk about. So they talked about the splicing and all stars at scale, and in addition to the scaling of brains, we're going to have to scale all-star characters. That tied into the question of what do primes get and the yield that they're going to get there. Some of the legal implications that David had alluded to. And then the last 2 topics were the differences between Gen 1 and Gen 2 brains and the sort of value differences. And then the last was earlier, which is mass market adoption and onboarding, and what needs to happen between crypto native power users versus normies. What do you guys think?
I like
the last
topic.
one.
Yeah,
the last one.
I like the first topic.
No, I would say not the last one.
Not the last one.
As in of the things that I'm most excited to talk about, that especially on hot on the heels of last night's AMA, the mass adoption onboarding. We're going to have lots of AMAs to kind of drill down.
I tend to agree.
Okay.
I like the second point, so R2 like the first. Maybe we can kind of touch both quickly.
Yeah. R2, kick us off.
So yeah, so I guess we found out that SDG is required for splicing. Well, they call it splicing for now. All stars. So I guess one of the things I thought was interesting about that is, so far what we found out is to produce new all stars. The only process to do that is through splicing. So as opposed to brains, which can be produced by either splicing or genome mining. So to me, it almost puts even more value on an all-star, because the only way to produce more all-stars is by having all-stars, whereas you can produce brains by holding ASTO. You don't even need a Genesis brain. And if we're already producing, I'm assuming the 165K target for Gen 2 brains is to coincide what they think the demand will be for just AFA. Then you really, which is like, I guess, I assume that means we need, probably actually quite a significant amount of all stars. So I think that was interesting. And then I think the other thing that was interesting was in the AMA, when someone asked specifically about primes, David sort of pivoted to talk about how there was issues about whether or not, talked about yield generating assets and whether or not that could be a problem with bodies like the SEC. So I think clearly that sort of indicates that there's some sort of potential yield component, or that's what they've been considering. And I think PJ, you kind of mentioned something that you knew, or that you've heard about, that they've been considering, which I hadn't actually heard about. Did you want to?
Yeah, I think just around that. I think that the primes is kind of such a small subset of the community that obviously the prime holders that I know of, the number of times on chats and on things, understandably so, is like, when do we get more prime alpha? When do we get? And it is interesting because obviously it's been talked about. We know it relates to breeding. We know there's some sort of yield element. I think what was interesting is, I've always thought, when I look at ASM as a auto-state machine, as a concept and as an investment and as a protocol, I kind of feel like there's 2 plays. I feel like one is, like Nick just talked about, we're building the platform and the protocol for gaming and AI gaming specifically. And I thought that play is ASTO, and that play is brains, the Genesis brains. That's kind of how I've looked at it personally. And then secondly, I thought, okay, all stars, they're amazing. I love all stars. All stars and arenas and bosses and primes, that's a play on, I thought that's more of a play on AFA, and more of a play on, along with AFA, will people bootstrap their game onto the characters that are already there for them? But it's a different, it's more like getting into a game studio, like we talked about before, than it is a protocol level. I thought what was interesting on last night's AMA is, through the answers that the team gave, is that, to me now, we know that all stars are linked in terms of the ASTO Energy creation that you're going to basically be able to, or the ASTO claim, the reverse claim. So we know that even those two are connected because some component of an all-star is its reverse claim on ASTO, however that works and however that's gamified. But on top of that, it's quite clear that that concept of people wanting to potentially, either ASM develops all-star games that can or can't be a success, and then other teams could like one of those games and choose to invest more heavily or to develop it in a different way. Clearly that is getting some traction, whereas before it was kind of like a thing that could get traction. And so now I think that instead of it being two separate things, it still is two separate things, but they seem like they both have a lot of traction and a lot of opportunity and potentially, you know, upside, which that's the thing I came away thinking. I'm normally like, am I bullish on the protocol? Am I bullish on AFA? If I'm more bullish on AFA, I might think, okay, I'll pick up some cheap all-stars. If I'm more, then, you know, Brains is always an easy one, apart from the fact that it's more ETH, because there's never a reason why I don't think you need more Genesis Brains, just because, like, why wouldn't you? And getting back to one of the points of this question, you know, it keeps getting come back. Everyone's saying, like, what's the value of Genesis? There's going to be so much liquidity with Gen 2. Gen 2, when you've got one, that's your brain, you do all of your games, you've got nothing you can do with that profile, your gaming profile, other than sell it. And that's kind of quite a harsh thing to do if you've been spending hours and hours, you know, whether it's Axie or AFA, mastering and improving your brain for your character. And the only way you can actually get financial remuneration from that is to sell it. Whereas Genesis, you can splice it, you can create a new version that hopefully will share some of the successes. So that, and then obviously there could be whitelists and different things like this, which we've talked about before. But I was truly, again, reinforced that conviction on Genesis Brains. And I, like, you know, hopefully this goes out after Chasing Tails buys a few more brains, because she's so mad at me, like, raving about the brains and picking up more brains, and like she always thinks I'm bidding just slightly ahead of her in the market. So
yeah, I picked up a couple this week as well, and she was scalding me.
Oh no.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good kind of leadway into what Tanuki had said. Just going, I feel like we did kind of good job of answering the last one, but what is the value of Gen 1 versus Gen 2 brains? And I mean, the way that I kind of look at it is that you have all of these sort of very dedicated gamers, like you have an addictive game like World of Warcraft, for example. And you know, let's say you spend like half of a year in gameplay or something after, you know, 5-10 years or something. You know, a lot of people get to that point and then they're just kind of done. They're ready for a new chapter. And so if you just have that and it's a Gen 2 brain, like obviously that's still inherently valuable. And a lot of people would do that. They'd have these, you know, level 60 or level 100, whatever they got to in World of Warcraft, and they'd sell them. And most likely the value they got is not even close to the value that they invested in with all those years. But I think now, with the Gen 1 brains, it allows people that really invest large amounts of time to recapture a lot of the value in terms of that investment, because they can then recreate some of that into copies and monetize it. And so if they're no longer interested in doing the training, they can then kind of shift and turn it into sort of a monetization venture, because they've created something that's very valuable to the market.
Well, someone is certainly going to have the Ajax or Ajax. I don't know how you truly pronounce it. Erwin's going to kill me with the Dutch stuff, but you know, like they're very good at their academy system in football, and so there's going to be the striker specialist or the defender specialist that is just going to corner that market. So yeah,
this I think is what's good. What you mean is this whole idea of really the hard work starts when these games come out. Like in terms of, I think a few people said, I think it was, who was it that said on the call about brain farming? And it's like, you know, that's what I'm looking to do. And you're thinking, to do that, you've got to be looking at, there's a whole lot of data analysis you're going to need to do. There's a whole lot of playing and actually looking at the different combinations with brains and with players. And that's just for one game, without the next legends, without burn down, all, you know, all these other potential derivatives. And that, so if you are investing that time as a brain manager, coining a new term, then you really do need to be like, take that really seriously and invest an awful lot of time, probably not necessarily playing the game as you would do, like you said, in a World of Warcraft type scenario, but more in a case of, these are my assets that I'm using like a football manager style. I'm sending out the team. I'll look at the reports and see how that team does. Now I've got Forest Green Rovers. I'm going to send those out and they're going to play. And now I'm going to get rid of those 2 players and draft in these other 2 new players. That's going to be so exciting and also so complicated. And that's just one game. And we're talking about a protocol and a platform for hundreds of games, aren't we? Which is just amazing. Yeah. I think I just get way too positive when we have any of these conversations.
Hey guys, we're at time. So I guess if there's any parting thoughts, let's share those now. Otherwise, let's shift over to speaking of excitement, PJ, what excites you most?
Oh God. I mean, everything I've just said, really. I think I think I do need to just try and I kind of want to focus my time just purely on ASM, because it's so easy to get distracted and have the whole magpie of, oh, what are they doing over there? And like, maybe you get dragged in, especially within our ecosystem, you get dragged into whether it's Buzzies or Atom or Seekers, which are all amazing opportunities and interesting things to look at. But I love doing this, where you basically reset your target on what you want to do, what's important to you. Why I minted back in October is with this concept of football game with artificial intelligence players, where you can kind of draft it like a football manager style. AI, I mean, it's with what has proved to be an amazing, I mean, my real first driver was just hearing a lot of the calls with Aaron, and now to see, like, to get more awareness of David and him to really like be obviously the leader that we know he is, and to sort of follow that all through. I think it blows my mind that I kind of feel like we'll be looking back in a year's time and thinking, why didn't we buy more brains? Why didn't we buy more all-stars? We had all of the pieces of the jigsaw, but we didn't just not put them together. We put them together. We saw the jigsaw, and then we decided, what if we're wrong? And this is kind of how I feel, in a sensible, not to, we don't want anybody, spending money, investing money that they can't afford to lose. But there's the opportunity to me, every AMA I come off and I can't sleep, even if it's 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm just thinking, oh my God. Yeah. So yeah, if that's bullish enough for you.
That's pretty bullish. How about you, R2? What's your sentiment?
First of all, I'll say, PJ, I think you have enough brains. So
I agree.
There's only 10,000.
Yeah, well, I mean, that is another thing. When you're potentially onboarding millions, I think.
I mean, these are still expensive items. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
they are. Yeah. I think there's like you guys, I'm excited about multiple things. I mean, obviously, there's the announcement what is it that's going to onboard millions of people? I love the game of football, so I'm really excited about AFA. I'm really excited to see how the AI is involved in the game mechanics, how what other sort of game mechanics exist outside of just the actual AI characters playing. So I'm guessing the trading side of things as well, and how people put their teams together and what kind of dynamics exist there. And I'm just excited to learn about how, what the capabilities of AI in the different types of games, but then also the other use cases like things like music or DeFi that's been mentioned. So pretty wide there, but I guess I'll focus in on AI AFA, as that's probably the most closest milestone.
Yeah, here. All right, Zapdart, bring us home.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with a lot of the points that PJ and R2 made. I think for me, it's most excited with AFA specifically. I just think that this is such a great idea. I'm mainly excited just to see, like, can I educate myself on kind of some of the nuances of machine learning and how it works? And then because I'm so competitive, like, can can I organize my team to be consistently beating you guys? And that's like what I want to know. Like, and if I'm losing, like, I'm just gonna, you gotta have to buckle down and kind of study strategy guides until I get to a point where my team is kicking butt. But yeah, I don't know. I'm excited about the ranking systems. If they do have tools that allow us to, like, I think part of it, back from my gaming days, is a lot of it is like status. And so almost if we could create like a ranking leaderboards where you get to a certain level and then you get like a special icon, or let's say like we created like a special like cape item that you could wear on your all-stars. Like, I think that's cool because then you are incentivizing gamers or players to get good because they want to get these rare items, and the only way to get them is through getting to those top tier levels of performance. So I think when that gets built out,
that's a Zoom call in itself. That is right, isn't it? We could have a chat for an hour about that. That's an awesome idea.
Yeah, so hopefully we can get to there. I think we are. I think it's honestly, I'm so bullish on ASM, and I have to stop myself because I just want to keep buying more and more. But I can't come up with a good reason why I shouldn't. So that's kind of where what about you, Tanuki? What are your thoughts?
No, I'm with you guys. Like R2 had alluded to, there's really three main use cases that David had kind of constructed when building this project, and we're all, still shaking from all of the gaming implications of it. So that's where my head's at, is just being able to roll my sleeves up and start turning knobs and dials with AI and seeing, sort of what the impact of that is. So yeah, I'm just excited to start, playing around with it. And I think that the notion of ASTO utility and kind of the burning of that is going to be right around the corner. So I'm excited to see what happens there.
Right on.
All right. Well, yeah, we're all still literally shaking. So have a great night, guys. Thanks for coming together on this emergency meeting.
Thanks for hosting. Thanks for organizing. That was fun.
Yeah, we'll talk to you guys soon.
Yeah, sounds good.